Okay, now that we're over here, let me see, is that better? Can you see that a little bit better? Or is that too bright? Whatever, it's fine. Alright, so I have my slab over here and I have a scraping tool over here. Now you really want to make sure that your scraping tool is clean, okay? Because the pottery kids use it with wet clay, so it's going to be really dirty. I'm going to do it over here so it doesn't get on my piece. You should just do it back there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take two scraping tools and I'm going to scrape all. It's much easier to clean clay while it's dry than when it's wet. When it's wet, it'll just squish and rub everywhere and just be so difficult to get off. Okay? So what I'm really looking for is that bottom edge to be nice and clean. Okay? So I have a clean edge there. Everybody got that? Alright, so now I've got this giant slab. And can you guys tell that it's puckering right there from my journey over? You never want to allow the clay to pucker, okay? So we're going to try to get it nice and flat again. And what I'm going to do is, I don't know if you guys can tell, but do you see the canvas texture? It's finer on one side and thicker on the other side. That's horrible craftsmanship. That is not smooth. Okay, and everybody in the clay world knows how that got there and just knows that you're lazy, okay? So you need to get rid of it. So what you're gonna do is and you can do this with a rib as well. I like doing it with the scraping tool because it's faster and wider. However, if you do it badly, you'll put marks in your clay. Everybody see those marks in the clay? That's badly done, okay? So don't do that. So you want to make sure that you're kind of laying it down. You don't want it to be up high. You're going to kind of lay it down and put equal pressure and push down nice and firmly. Just be careful that you're not poking in the corners. But even if you do like I just did, you can even smooth that away. Okay. Now on the other side, I'm going to gently take two hands and don't slam it down. Everybody needs to be careful. Like these are dying baby birds. Okay. Because you'd be way more gentle with a dying baby bird than a living baby bird with a chew. Okay. The other way you can do this is you can use a red rubber rib, and that will work just fine as well. Okay? I don't think we have 30 scraping tools, so if you don't mind using a red rubber rib, that totally works. Now, what we're going to do is this is way too much clay. Okay? So I'm going to start by cutting off a bit of my clay, all right? So if this is what my clay looks like, I want to make sure I'm at the widest part, and I want to go at least like 3 extra fingers on all sides, okay? So I can cut it here. I am good on that side, and I can cut it here, and I'm going to cut it here. This is still going to be too big. But what this is going to allow to happen is for me to drape my clay off a little bit easier. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. And the best way to keep this, we're not done with our scraps yet. We're going to have lots of scraps here. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to do right now, because this is nice and fresh and wet, and the pottery kids can use this happily. Okay? But if I leave it flat and skinny, it's going to dry out faster. Do we want it to dry out? No. So what we're going to do is, even though it's going to have all kinds of air bubbles in it, we're just going to fold it over on itself and get it into a nice ball so that it keeps its moisture as best we can, okay? I can even give it like a spray on both sides, and I'm just going to lay it off to the side. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm going to continue to add to that scrap ball. Now, the next stage that we're going to need is we're going to need a banding wheel, okay? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my bowl, I'm going to put this on my arm, so I'm holding it. I'm going to put my wheel on the banding wheel, make sure it's nice and sturdy. And then I like to stand up so I can really see where the middle is. And I'm going to very carefully drape it off the edges. Does it want to become a bowl very easily? No, it does not. And there's trapped air inside of that foot. So what I like to do is just lift it up and get all that air out on the top first. This is the weakest area, okay? Because there's a foot here and it's going to want to rip right there. So don't press really hard on the foot because you'll squish the clay skinnier and skinnier and it will rip there. Okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in a spiral. So I'll start right here and I'm gonna lift the bottom and I'm just going down a little bit at a time and I'm making it flat. Okay? Now if I can tell that I have way, way, way too much clay somewhere, like I do right here, I wanna be careful. I don't wanna cut off too much. So I'm just gonna cut off the corners that are kind of in my way. Okay, I'm gonna add it to my ball of clay over here. Stays nice and wet. I'm gonna continue to press down as I go around. Now see right here, it's starting to crack. I don't know, can you guys tell? Starting to get little cracks right there. So I'm going to smooth that out. And cracks are very normal and natural with clay, have you guys noticed? Your job is to catch them. Okay, so I'm lifting up and pressing down, and I still have way too much clay over here. So I'm gonna cut some of it off. In fact, I'm gonna use the banding wheel because my bowl isn't as low as the banding wheel, and I'm just gonna cut off any extra that I have there. It doesn't have to be pretty, but just don't rip your clay when you're doing this. It's just gonna keep going off, so we're just gonna ignore it. See how this is wanting to pucker and fold in on itself? Do not let it. Use two hands and very gently. See how that one wants to go too? So that means that our extra clay is getting in the way. Just gonna get rid of it. Okay. Now, at this point, we really want it to hang off of the piece. So if you look over here, there are underglazes here and glazes that are not in the big tubs, they're in the little tubs, okay? And I like this, so I'm gonna switch over to this instead so that it truly drapes over. And that way I can really get it on top. Now right here it's wanting to pucker, so I'm just gonna carefully not let it, and I did a little bit. So if I did, I'm just gonna smooth it out, okay? So we're gonna gently, little by little, I started at the top, or where actually is upside down, so it's the foot, and I'm just going around and around, and I'm getting a bowl shape. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a blade. Now you guys have different blades in your boxes. You do not need a sharp blade for this. This piece has a sharp blade on the back end of it. There are also these long knives. Have you guys seen the long knives that are in there? Okay, you can use these. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut upward until I hit the rim of the bowl. Once I hit the rim of the bowl, I'm gonna switch my blade so it's horizontal. I'm gonna keep my blade horizontal with the tabletop. I don't wanna have it raised up or down. I want to keep it flat with the tabletop. Everybody feeling me? So I've got this little notch that I've cut out. Everybody see that notch? And that notch is the same length as my bowl. Does everybody see that? Now see how I'm getting a pucker right here? That's dangerous. So we're just going to be careful with that. So now I'm going to get back inside of that notch, and I'm just going to carefully saw. I don't want to press the clay. I'm gonna kind of saw the clay nice and flat. I'm raising it up right now. And I actually like this one better because it kind of cuts better. Keeping it nice and flat. And this is not gonna be a perfect situation, okay? So I'm right-handed, so I'm keeping it kind of to my right side over here. And I'm just following the edge nice and flat of the bowl. And I'm going all the way around. Now this piece that I am cutting off, I'm going to save it, okay? Because what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the foot out of it. Okay, now I'm back to the beginning. Everybody see how it's there right there? You don't want to keep it upside down like this or right side up, actually. Why do I not want to keep it like this? Because gravity is going to keep widening it. So I'm just, at this point, I'm done with this. You can give it to your neighbor or whatever. I'm gonna go back to my banding wheel. Maybe I'm not, I don't like it. I'm gonna keep it. I'm just really gonna press it down a little bit, okay? Now, the rim is going to be fixed when the clay gets harder, all right? We cannot fix the rim today. What we are gonna do is we're gonna put, and I can kind of see a circle of where the rim is. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna score, slip, score on a foot to it. Score, slip, score. I score it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this clay, I'm gonna really press it in really good so I don't have air bubbles. And I'm just gonna roll it, okay? Now when you're rolling clay, like if you have a thicker part, I would go ahead and pinch it so it's the same thinness. That's way too much clay, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this in half. I don't need all that clay. I'm gonna go ahead and I try to see how I'm widening my hands apart. I start in the middle and go really nice, and I keep going and keep going. Kind of wants to flatten. If you have a thicker area, you can thin out just that one area. I like this area over here, so I'm gonna leave that area alone. And now I have a nice foot, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take my bowl and I'm gonna add the slip. So I put my finger on top and I shake. Why do I shake it? Because all of the dirt is gonna fall. Ripley, is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah, it's all
Sorry.
mixed together.
Yes, so we wanna make sure that the water and the slip are good together. But when you're done, you wanna very gently take your needle tool and just kind of shove it in there, and that'll declog it. As the semester goes on, the clay will thicken up and we'll just have to take the lids off. But for right now, it should still be wet enough to just add slip. Now, if you don't have enough slip that it is squishing out when you score, slip, score, like right there, there's not enough slip right there. You should have enough slip everywhere that it's nice and thick and that it's going to squish out. Okay. Now be very careful when you guys do this. Now I scored, I slipped, and now I'm gonna score again. Now this is important, and this is something that the lady didn't show. On my foot, I'm gonna very gently score the top so I don't squish it. And when I stick this on, I'm not gonna put it down the whole way just yet. I'm gonna overlap it right here. And then what I'm going to do is on an angle, I'm gonna cut these pieces. So see how my blade is not straight down? That's straight down right there. I want it at an angle, and I'm gonna basically cut a diagonal. So see how those are gonna go together perfectly right there? Because I cut it on a diagonal, yes. So now it's there, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna really carefully rock it in, and see how when I'm rocking it in, see how the squish is slipping out? The slip is squishing out. It's also, because my clay is super wet, it's also altering the shape, okay? It's getting a little bit pointy, but it's nice and wet, and so it'll be all right. I'm going to squish out the seam. Pushing down, pushing down. Now, as long as you do this while it's really wet on wet, my bowl is wet and my foot is wet. Everybody feeling that? This is kind of a dangerous situation. It's wet on wet on wet. I'm going to take a wooden tool, and I like a wooden tool that is kind of round. So see this end on this tool right here is kind of round on the end. And what I'm gonna do is, because my fingers will squish on the slip, I'm not gonna use my fingers, the wood will absorb it, and I'm just gonna go all the way around it, and I'm gonna eliminate the seam. Do you guys see a seam? Not on that side. Is it neat? No, but the seam is gone, and we're trying to get rid of that seam. We wanna convince the clay that they've always been one. We're lying to the clay. Okay, now our goal for these bowls is for them to be clean and smooth. That is not clean and smooth. But right now, I'm gonna move on to the outside. Okay? And I'm gonna squish, because it's wet on wet, I don't have as much scoring on the outside, so if you're paranoid, you can put a little bit of scoring. But mine is still really super wet and fresh, so I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna squish it down. Now you want your, I would say, look how skinny it looks right now. But when I started, it was kind of the shape of like, I would maybe, this is even a little bit too skinny. Because see how I'm squishing it down on the outside, it's getting skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. You guys noticing that? I would try to make your coil at least as thick as your pointer finger. That way you can squish a third of it down on the outside, you can squish a third of it down on the inside, and then you're still left with a third of it as the foot. Okay? Now when I'm done today, I'm not going to finish this for time's sake, but when I'm done, I'm going to use my red rubber rib, and I'm going to smooth all of this out. I'm going to get it nice and smooth. Now the nice thing about it is that you shouldn't have hills and valleys on the outside if you do a good job smoothing. See those lines I'm getting? I'm getting lines, it's because my rib is not clean. So if your rib is not clean, pinch off the excess. I can also use the tip of this. I like to put my finger on it, and then I can smooth this all out inside of here and make it look so fresh and so smooth. You guys understand what's going on?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do it. I'm